I am back, and with a new sewing project video this time. You know those stories of Lolitas going to the thrift store just looking for random stuff and then miraculously coming across this beautiful OP or skirt that they just love? Well, when I go to the thrift store, this is the kind of stuff I find. This dress is a replica of a Taba brand called, let me consult my notes, Bilaganti, I believe it's pronounced. And this OP is the Sea and Wind Retro Sailor Dress OP version 1.0. This is a replica of a dress that sells for 127 Canadian dollars. I think I was able to find the actual listing for this replica, and it was about, I think, like $40 Canadian. I got this dress for $7 at the thrift store, which means someone spent $40 on a dress. Maybe they didn't know it was a replica. Okay, I'll give it to them. Just for it to end up in a thrift store, just to end up in my greedy little hands. I have a I can save her complex about clothing. Whenever I go to the thrift store, I pick up a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't, because I'm like, oh, I could just trim that hem. Oh, if I add lace, it would look nice. I want to try to upgrade this OP. Okay, so before I touch anything on this dress, I have set a couple of ground rules for myself for this project. Namely, this is a low effort project, which means a couple of things. I will not be buying anything new to add on to this dress. I'm not buying new laces, new ribbons, new trims, new fabric, nothing. This dress was only $7, so I don't want to end up wasting like $30 worth of supplies on something that really doesn't need it. So I'll only be using laces, trims, fabrics, whatever, that I have in my own personal stash. Secondly, because this is a low effort project, I will not be doing anything like taking the entire dress apart. As much as I don't like the waist situation that's going on here, I'm not going to waste the time to take it out and replace it with something else. I want this project to take maybe like 2 or 3 days, not a week. Those are my rules for this project. Let's start the process. Before we begin, I just want to say that I'm not a sewing expert by any means. This project is meant to act more as a learning experience for myself, and maybe inspiration for you. It's not necessarily a tutorial on how you should be doing certain things, and I might make a lot of mistakes. But if you never make mistakes, you can never learn from them. Experimenting is really important, especially in creative mediums like this. So, here's a sketch of what I plan to do with the dress. Overall, I don't hate the way that the dress looks. I just think it's a bit too plain for my liking. I hope that adding lace to the collar, the sleeves, and the bottom of the dress will make the dress a bit more interesting to look at. So, here are the materials I'll be using for this project. All of these are sourced from my supply stash. I did not buy anything new for this project. I managed to find 2 types of plain white lace that I think will suit the dress. First is this ruffled lace that I'll be using for the collar, the sleeves, and the little triangular piece on the collar. I still don't know what this part is actually called. This is a pretty simple trim, but I think that it'll suit the aesthetic of the dress fairly well. The second lace is this cotton trim that I'll be adding to the bottom of the skirt. I think this lace gives off more of like an old school vibe. It doesn't really perfectly match the aesthetic of the dress, but you know, I'm working with what I got. This black ribbon will be used to make small bows to add onto the back of the collar. I'll be replacing the buttons on the waist with these gold, sort of like floral patterned buttons. In a perfect world, I'd rather have cute little heart-shaped golden buttons, but again, I'm just working with what I got here. And finally, I'll be using this polyester cotton fabric to replace, the very sad droopy bow that's already on the dress. This will be the most time-consuming part of the project, which, to be fair, isn't saying much, because this project is already pretty simple. I don't usually use sewing patterns to make bows, but in this case, I'll be using the simplicity pattern. I started this project by working first on the collar. Adding the lace onto the collar was pretty simple. I seam ripped the collar open and simply pinned the ruffle lace inside of the collar. Stitching the collar back closed was a simple process of just using a straight stitch. But after closing the collar, I realized I forgot to stitch the ribbons onto the back of the collar. I planned to do this so that the thread attaching the ribbon to the collar would be hidden in between the two collar pieces, if that makes sense. I realized this way after I actually finished the collar. I realized this as I was getting to the end of the process, and I was like, I don't feel like redoing the entire collar again. I'm a little lazy. So I then added the ruffle trim to the little triangular piece in the front. Then I added the ruffle trim onto one of my sleeves, and then I realized I had misremembered how much lace I had actually had. I only had enough for both of the sleeves and the collar, but by mistake, I thought I had enough for both of the sleeves, the collar, and the little triangular piece. So I ended up having to seam rip the ruffle lace from one of the sleeves. I had to think really quickly of a plan B. I settled on using shirring to make the sleeves look more puffy. By the way, when you're using elastic thread to shirr, always backstitch when you begin and end on the stitch. Some people say that you can knot the ends together, but whenever I do that, the elastic always pops out of the stitches, and I get really angry. I know I said that this wasn't a tutorial, but just a little tip from someone who has been doing a lot of shirring recently. I took this old school looking cotton lace and sewed it to the bottom of the dress. Again, a very simple process. Took me 2 seconds. Easiest thing of the whole project. So this lace has been through a couple of projects before. This lace was used on a Homura cosplay, a handmade Homura cosplay from when I was a teenager. It then recently got transferred onto a skirt that I made for a local convention. Unfortunately, that outfit did not come out the way that I wanted it to. I had ordered a bunch of lace that still to this day has not shown up. I ordered the lace in October. As of recording this, it's April. I still have not received the lace. I have no hope in receiving that lace. That thing is long gone by now. I don't know if I want to put pictures of it because it's very embarrassing. maybe a very tiny picture in the middle of the screen. Replacing the buttons was as easy as replacing buttons was. I still wish I had some sort of cute sailor themed buttons, maybe an anchor or a little fish or even a heart or something like that. But again, unfortunately, I'm just kind of working with what I got here. I was planning on making a replacement bow out of black fabric, but I ended up not going through with that idea. I just didn't like how it looked on the dress itself. I thought it made the entire dress look a bit too dark. My second idea was to scrounge up enough red fabric instead, but I only had enough red fabric for a very small bow. I thought about my options and I realized that this big bow I wanted was non-negotiable. So instead of the black fabric or the red fabric, I took some white fabric out of my stash. To make the bow, I used this absolutely terrifying simplicity pattern. Isn't this image nostalgic in literally the worst way possible? It reminds me of conventions from when I was a little teenager. There's a couple of ways to make bows, but in general bows are really easy to make. You basically just need to make 3 rectangles and that's it. So you don't really require a pattern to make one. I'm only using this pattern because it's exactly the size of the bow that I wanted, and I'm lazy. I didn't want to waste any time drawing out a rectangle when I already had the pattern right in front of me. Also, don't be like me and use red wax tracing paper on white fabric. It kind of stained the fabric and I'm still having trouble getting most of it out. So, this pattern says to use interfacing to stiffen the fabric of the bow so it doesn't droop. Interfacing, to my knowledge, is sort of like a webbed glue. When you place it between sheets of fabric and you iron it, the fabric gets a lot stiffer and a lot firmer, so it doesn't flop around as, well, fabric does, right? So, story time about interfacing. When I was a teenager, I accidentally pressed a hot iron down onto some interfacing by mistake, and it started smoking, and it borderline destroyed the iron. I couldn't use the iron after that. Ever since then, I've been super reluctant to try it again. Until now, I finally have a reason to try some interfacing. I took these interfacing strips and sewed them onto the wrong sides of the fabric, stitched the bow parts closed, then turned them inside out. You don't see this on camera, but I then ironed the pieces to get them flat and to melt the glue, and I did not cause a smoke show. I made very sure that those strips of interfacing were tightly wrapped within the fabric. With my pieces done, I went about assembling the bow. The simplicity pattern wants you to use a gathering stitch to pull the middle of the bow parts together, but I much prefer folding them, even if it's super fiddly and I get really frustrated because it's so difficult to get both sides exactly even. In the recording you're seeing, I sewed the bow onto the dress, but when I tried the dress on with the bow sewed on it was very sad and very droopy. The pattern recommends threading a ribbon through the middle of the bow and attaching it underneath the collar. It's basically just like a tie, you know? So I tried doing that, but then the bow still just was not sitting nicely. It was messing up the collar. I ended up attaching a snap to the middle of the bow, and I sewed the corners of the bow onto the collar just to ensure that they won't droop. I find that this looks the best. When I wear it, it doesn't look sad, it doesn't look droopy. It took a bit of trial and error, but I finally found a way to make sure that the bow does not droop, even if it's a pretty heavy bow. My last step was adding some simple ribbons onto the back. Unfortunately, I should have done this when I seam ripped the collar open, but this was quite literally the last thing I had to do on the dress, and I really just did not want to do it again. With the bow finally on the dress, this upcycling project is now complete. The final version of the dress differs a lot from my original plan, but honestly I'm a lot more pleased with this version. This project gave me a chance to experiment a little bit. Some of the choices that I made for this dress I ended up really liking, some choices not so much. So I made a list of what I think turned out well and a list of things that I think I could have improved on. Pros about this project, cons about this project, what did I like, what did I dislike, my final thoughts on this. Honestly, I had so much fun doing this project. It's been a while since I've modified a garment like this. There are certain aspects that I changed that deviated from the plan that I ended up liking more than my original plan. For example, you know, for the sleeves, I just planned on adding lace to the edge of the sleeves when I miscalculated, and it turns out I did not have enough lace to do that. Instead, I added some elastic shirring onto the sleeves. So now they look more like actual puff sleeves instead of the weird, like, it had like a puff at the top and then at the end it just went like, poof. It was very sad looking. I really like the bow. I love like these giant statement bows on Lolita pieces. I don't usually like, I don't wear like Sailor Lolita. I don't really wear like, I don't want to say more costume, but more like themed Lolita. Like I don't wear like military Lolita. I don't wear stuff like that. So it was very interesting exploring sort of like a new style, sort of like a new way of styling and sewing a garment, because the garments that I have sewn haven't been like sailor themed like this. I've made a safuku before though, just not a sailor Lolita cord. But I really love these giant bows. I don't know why I like them so much. I think that most of the things that I disliked about this project were because of the constraints that I put in for myself, not necessarily because they were like mistakes on my part. There are a couple things, like I wish that when I was adding the ribbons onto the back of the collar, I wish that was one of the first steps that I did and not one of the last ones that I kind of forgot about at the end. I also wish that I had a different kind of lace other than this type of lace. But like stuff like that was sort of the name of the game. This sort of the constraints that I put into this project were there for a reason. You know. So I couldn't really have everything that I wanted. Like if I had an unlimited budget, this dress would look a lot different than, you know, it looks like with a $0 budget. Also, by the way, these wrist cuffs, I hesitate to call them wrist cuffs. I sewed them like literally 5 seconds before filming. I was like, my wrists look bare. And I was like, I went to the sewing machine, I was like, here they are. Also, another thing that I really do not like about this dress, I hate the waist ties. I hate the waist ties so much. They don't do anything. Usually waist ties are there to like sort of cinch in your waist. But the issue with this is that it doesn't just cinch in the waist, it cinches in like the skirt as well. So usually when you cinch in the waist on a Lolita dress, when you cinch it in, it makes the skirt look puffier by comparison because, you know, you're tightening that waist, so it's just, you know. But this, it just makes the skirt smaller, which completely defeats the point of having waist ties in the first place. Like, this is connected to the skirt. So when I tie it backwards like that, it makes the skirt smaller and it squishes the petticoat. So I think I'm just gonna remove these waist ties because they're like less than worthless. They're like actually like harming the silhouette of the dress. Thank you guys so much for watching. This project was actually so much fun to do. And I honestly really suggest doing something similar if you are interested in Lolita but you don't feel like making a big purchase yet, you just want to try something out. I don't suggest spending $40 on Lolita from Amazon. I think it's a lot more cost effective to maybe go thrifting, find a dress that you can modify, you can try on. If you're interested in sewing, I think it's a very good beginner project. Modifying an existing garment is so much easier than making something from scratch. Trust me, I've done both. Also, literally as I'm sewing this, as I'm working on this on my sewing machine and I'm watching YouTube, I was watching Lovely Laura's newest video at this time of recording about like Lolita community, I guess like tales or like myths or folklore. You know those like stories, like the woman whose stepmother made her Baby the Starshine bright dress into an ironing board, stuff like that, that like gets passed down like in the Lolita community. She made like a video about like stuff like that. It was really interesting. And one of my videos was a little clip in it. It was me making biscuits, like the little cookie necklace charms. So thank you for that, Laura. That's very sweet. I had a me jump scare. It was a little bit frightening. And next video I am so excited about because I made an order from Makari, Japan. I'm so excited. I got a few things. The package is staring at me right there, and trust me, this video is gonna come out a lot quicker than it took for this video to come out because I'm so freaking excited to open those packages. And it's easy. Opening a package, it's easy. This took a little bit, you know, but I like doing it, so it doesn't matter. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm so excited for our next video, so you should be excited too, so stay tuned if you're interested. And have a really nice day, have a good day, and okay, bye.